Card games, deck building, man, I love it. Or I'm pretty sure I love it. I love Yu-Gi-Oh!, I love Dominion, Slay the Spire, but outside of that I actually try to avoid card games. Haven't touched Hearthstone because I know I won't just give it a quick go, it'll consume me. There's an addictive satisfaction that comes from creating order from chaos, and card games emulate this. In a card game you have to organize the chaos and derive power from it. You have huge card pools that must be simplified into decks, then huge deck pools that must be simplified into a meta. You never get full control over the random aspects, the skill comes from maximizing the control you can have. While most games determine skill through physical ability and mechanical mastery, deck building has a research-heavy skill curve. It's achieved through game knowledge and research. You have to understand how cards function, what cards synergize together, optimizing deck ratio to get the cards you need in the situations you need them. Creating consistency, creating order. Then after that you have to understand the meta, what decks are good, what decks are bad, their strengths and weaknesses, and how they work head to head with your strengths and weaknesses. An infinite possibility of opposing decks testing you. It has the depth to be compelling, the perfect amount of randomness to never get boring, and a creative process of expression through deck building. There's a lot of untapped potential in video games for deck building. Feels like there are now thousands of existing or up-and-coming indie games with some sort of card-based mechanic. But back at the start of the new millennia, these kinds of games were far and few between. You had your Tetramasters, your Baton Kaitosises, but one special boy rose as the cream of the crop. Megaman Battle Network is the bizarre grid-based action RPG card battle system adaptation of Mega Man onto the Game Boy Advance. You play as a character named Lan in a sci-fi future where all things are electronically connected through the net. In Battle Network, the internet is a real place and humans access and operate through a partnership with their net navies. Lan's net navi is the titular Megaman.exe. Before going any further, I have to say, if any of this sounds interesting and you want to try the series, skip the first game, just go straight to the second game. Your first concern would probably be, but what about the story? Fuck the story. I mean, don't fuck the story. The story rocks and is good, but not in the same way that something like Les Mis has a good story. The story is more akin to Scooby-Doo. In Scooby-Doo you have a monster of the week. There's an intrigue in the mystery and the fun is in the chase and the charm of its colorful cast of characters and spooky aesthetic. The Battle Network appeal is much the same. You have your terrorist baddie up to no good, and you as Lan are there to solve the mystery, all while being charmed by the world, its inhabitants, and the scenario at hand. Sometimes the zoo gets hacked and all the animals get loose, sometimes the aquarium gets hacked and all the fish are loose, and sometimes you prevent 9/11 from happening. It's good, it's charming, I love it. So, while playing as Lan in the physical world, you can jack into appliances and computers with Mega Man to delete viruses and save the day. Mega Man has his basic buster, but primarily uses battle chips that are kept in a folder for a variety of effects. The chips are the cards, and the folder is the deck, and the action takes place on 2 3x3 grids. One of the traits it takes from traditional turn-based JRPGs is the perspective, its camera angle, during combat. When analyzing the different angles used in these games, there is a spectrum of emotion that can be expressed through the angle, much like in film. Compare the narrative stylings of Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. Dragon Quest games feature silent protagonists and simple storylines with the purpose of having you, the player, immerse yourself into the player character role, so the first-person perspective creates a more intimate experience. Final Fantasy, on the other hand, has complex storylines and a distinct separation between the controller and its characters, so it fits much better with this more cinematic side angle. The examples don't stop there though. Breath of Fire and Suikoden 2 kind of play it both ways, with these over-the-shoulder shots. The separation is still there, but the angle is far more intimate and helps you empathize with your party. Older Pokemon games are a first-person perspective through the trainer's eyes, and an over-the-shoulder for their Pokemon. The camera angles for these games are nothing short of genius. They are both immersing you as the trainer and propagating your relationship with your Pokemon. The newer Pokemon games... let's not talk about those, actually. And that leads to Battle Network. When it comes to card games, there isn't much thought needed for what angle to use. With a first-person perspective, you can both mechanically view your cards and immersively be the card player. The Battle Network's gameplay mechanics require a wide-angle shot, so the intimacy with Mega Man is lost in favor of the mechanics. A fair trade-off. You shouldn't be sacrificing your gameplay mechanics for narrative. But in this case, that's not exactly what's going on, because Battle Network is technically a first-person perspective. The battle is being operated and viewed through Land's perspective, who the player is controlling, and whose eyes you look through. The software nature of the menus is contextualized in-universe, and the intimacy, much akin to the Pokemon angle, is not entirely lost. The game kind of gets its cake and eats it too. Compare this with Star Force, the much maligned spiritual sequel in which the player character, the controlled character in this game, literally becomes Megaman, and the angle shifts to a behind-the-back shot. I think these games kind of get too much hate, and are real fun in their own right, but a lot of fans didn't like these games mostly based off this camera angle shift. The Battle Network series takes a lot of cues from turn-based JRPGs, but instead of gaining experience and levels, you obtain more chips to update your folder, and the overall chip pool grows. As you progress through the game, your character gets stronger through HP power-ups and equipment-based boosts, but most of your growth comes from the advancement of your folder. You add stronger chips, chips that synergize with each other, and chips with similar codes to add consistency. Much like the newer Paper Mario games, you don't gain any experience or levels from battles, but battles still play an important role, because the currency and chips you do obtain can be traded in for stronger chips that can make permanent improvements to your folder. Deck building is a form of expression. You can create the folder you want depending on the gameplay style you prefer. Contrast this with most level-up based JRPGs. There is always a best-in-slot weapon or armor piece. Your stats can be maxed and capped out. It's a linear progression with an endpoint. But in Battle Network, the game branches for each player depending on what folder they build. The linearity is also present in the enemies. Once your level has reached a certain point and has ascended a tier, enemies in a lower tier all begin to blend together. They become fodder, to be one-shotted with little benefit in ways of drops or EXP. They are a bit of a waste of time, which can, on a level, be cathartic, but in Battle Network, enemies, regardless of what point in the game they are from, are like miniature puzzles that can always be improved upon. They could have seemingly low HP, but their placement and offensive/defensive characteristics require you to seek out specific win conditions in your folder, at which point it's up to your ability to have constructed a folder that can quickly and consistently give you access to that win condition. With a poorly constructed folder, all encounters could potentially pose a threat. The threat could be out of game, a fight could waste your time, similar to level-based fodder, but the difference here is you can make improvements to your folder to increase its consistency and prevent that time waste. You can make a difference through the gameplay. The threat could also be in-game, through chip damage. Even taking one hit could have ramifications. It is not uncommon in Battle Network to have a random battle take an awkward turn due to player error or a poor opening hand that leaves you vulnerable for future encounters. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, a lot of early characters will play an Exodia-based deck. Exodia is far too inconsistent to see high-level play in and outside of the games, but it does have a win condition, and can still exist as an antagonizing force. You can still lose to the very first trainers in those games. And man, that's cool. To have random mid-game enemies still be a threat. Card-based video games are full of small mechanical gems like this, and they play a big role in why Battle Network still has a cult following today.